if it was the design or if it was the contractor that was used.
Well, I don't think they were ever designed for an 80,000-pound truck. I mean, that's, they just weren't designed for that.
But clearly, as was just pointed out, we do have two kinds of brick streets. We've got the brick streets where the brick is visible, and then we have those brick streets that have been overlaid with asphalt probably decades ago.
Yeah.
Are there any brick roads in the city of Largo that aren't on this list, where there's brick on the surface? And
To our knowledge, no. We believe this is the comprehensive list.
so, and the only reason I ask this is because we talked a little bit about Washington Avenue, and I think that's not on this list. And in the picture, there was a brick road between the Publix and Mildred Helms Elementary. So I think we might be missing a brick road.
And let me double check on that one, that it doesn't have a number instead of the noun name.
Maybe it's a numbered road
Let
over
me
there.
double check on that for you.
It's not on the map. It might be
Behind
on,
Ace, you're talking about that little.
I don't remember if it runs behind Ace.
I think you're right. I think it goes down to the condos there, kind of, it's north and
Yeah,
south.
Washington runs from the car wash to the trail.
Right.
But I don't think that's brick. I think it's a perpendicular
You're
road
right.
to that.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
might be a brick road. That run, where there's the new Habitat house that,
Yeah.
well, maybe not new, it's probably 3 years old now.
We'll look at that.
But yeah. So I had that question. And the granite curbing, it was probably several years ago. It was an engineer at the city that's not in this room. I don't think they're at the city anymore, but they told me that the granite curbing is, because at the time they were removing granite curbing when they were redoing a road. And I was asking why we were removing the granite curbing, and they told me that, and the concrete curbing they were putting in was about 18 inches from the top surface to the bottom surface of the concrete curbing. They told me that that's more substantial than 4 feet of granite. I still disagree with them. I told them that I did then. So I think that it's important to note that that granite curbing was put in, Henry wasn't here, so it was a long time ago.
No, I have no comment.
It's been there a long time, and as you said, I mean, it's indestructible stuff. And it's I looked out because I knew we were talking about this today. There's no secret that I'm in my office. There's a asphalt street out front, but the road behind me is a granite curb brick road. So I looked out, and the granite curbing looks like the day you put it in. I think probably. You don't have to pressure wash it. You don't have to clean it. It doesn't crack. It just maintenance-wise, it's kind of a forever thing. And I think a lot of these roads that we have trouble with, I don't think that 4th Avenue is quite. I mean, it's a bumpy road, but that slows the traffic down. You go to some old Thornton Park in Orlando. They have some 80 and 100-year-old roads that are like an amusement ride, but the neighborhood loves them. It keeps the traffic calm, and they're beautiful. So that's where this kind of came from, is folks that have come to me that live near 1st Avenue Southwest over near Woodrow Park, that lost some of their brick roads in a stormwater project about 20 years ago, maybe a little more than that, and they had a big uprising in that neighborhood to try to preserve the brick roads. And I thought it was worthy of putting an ordinance on the books that, we're not saying that all these brick roads are going to stay forever, and we're not saying that we're going to spend the money to rehabilitate any of them, but before they're removed, it's going to come to this commission. I think that's important. And the big thing about coming to this commission is it's a public meeting. So we're going to inform the public before we remove a brick road in front of somebody's house. Many of these people, I mean, some of them have lived there for generations, but many of them bought a house on a brick road because they want that. They want a brick road. And whether it's a 100-year-old brick road or 4th, which was rehabbed 15 years ago now, they're there because, in part, because they want that character in their neighborhood. So I think it's important to preserve them. I was going to ask the other thing that I wanted to mention is, if I look around for input on brick roads in Florida specifically, and there's plenty of cities in the state that are trying to find brick. Now, thankfully, we're not looking at expanding our brick road network. So we're not trying to look at, okay, where was historic brick roads all throughout Largo, and let's make them brick again, because that would be a crazy number. Tampa is trying to restore, to return some roads to brick, and they can't find brick. They sold their brick to Winter Park back in the 60s, and Winter Park doesn't want to sell it back to them. So we're not in that issue. I just want to preserve, and I think that the people that live in this area very desperately want to preserve the brick roads that are there.
It's just a quick question. Do we have a status, or do we even have a project for First Avenue Northeast next to the high school?
As you remember, a number of years ago, we were looking at that partnership with Pinellas County Schools, and then obviously we brought the commission the price tag for both the Brick Street and the drainage improvements that came along with that, and obviously the numbers were somewhat astounding. That project is still on the archives in our unfunded CIP process, our Questica. We are also working with the school board's consultant to take their design, and after they moved their stormwater elements and did their stormwater elements independent of what was going to be the joint project, we're engaging their consultant to get a price to see what it would take to do those last touches of the final design of us doing an independent project. So the simple answer is yes, we've got for better sake of the description, a 90% design and an unfunded CIP project on the books, but it's still a very significant number no matter how you look at it.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, are the holes in that road, I mean, there's significant depressions in that road.
Yes.
There's holes in it, yeah.
So are those from failed stormwater pipes?
Those actually Barry's in the room with us. Barry has formed a citywide micro business for brick streets right now. So he's partnering with a bunch of cross-department other staff, and they've actually taken a look at it. Actually, Barry, do you want to come up and just talk about, they've looked at those spot failures. There's really about 3 areas where the micro business has looked at that and put some price tags on it.
So first, I do want you to know there is a storm drainage issue at First Avenue Northeast and 4th Street. Well, we appear to have funding to be able to fix that stormwater-related issue. Now, that's still kind of an asphalt turnout there, so you haven't gotten to the brick part of First Avenue Northeast, but you are going to see an improvement there with the asphalt. Jerry mentioned 3 places on First Avenue Northeast that really could use some improvement. And it appears that the reason for the holes is because of the way the brick has been pushed. If you go back and look at old Google Earth, if you kind of roll the time back and look at where I think the elementary school was there, close to 2nd, you can see where the buses would come in and where they would come out. And when you look at the brick right there, you can see the brick has been pushed and kind of separated. That's caused base failure, and that's what's caused those holes.
So that should be fixed.
Yeah. I mean, I was just on that road, First Ave, I think actually a week ago today, and it was. I mean, you can. It's almost inoperable. I mean, it is. I don't know how many people drive on that road on a daily basis. I'm assuming when school is in, there's a lot more people, but it's unsafe road. So, we might want to obviously, we just went through our CIP program, but we might want to revisit that and see if it's something that we can do, because there are 3, at least, depressions in that road that are unsafe. I mean, I'm surprised we haven't had any damage to a vehicle.
If you drive down the middle of the road, as long as there's no other traffic, it's okay.
As long as there's no
To be
traffic.
clear, that happens to asphalt roads as well.
It does.
That road's been,
Well, yeah, we were just,
Largo Central hasn't been there for how long? The buses that created the problem to begin with. So that road was a little bit bumpy when I was in high school.
yeah, it's,
Yeah,
right, I mean, I think that's just the nature of the brick, but, I mean, this is a little bit
Right.
above and beyond.
And I think that if you, and I said this back when we were talking about First Avenue, if you make that a straight road, if you make that an asphalt roadway, it's going to be a cut through. People are going to turn right at either Central Park Drive or the next road in between by the hotel there, and bust that corner consistently.
You were talking earlier, Mayor, about density bonus incentives. Hypothetically, if there were to be a redevelopment in that area, would it not be wise to consider some
That would be a
major
good,
restoration?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
redevelop, yeah.
But I think that, I think it's important to try to preserve that brick road.
Well, I'm saying maybe make that
But
part
make
of
it so it's a functional road again.
Right, so Commissioner Caro is stating that if a redeveloper were to come in and redevelop that property, if they agreed to rehab first, that would allow them to get a density bonus.
Yeah, stuff like that's type of.
That's, yeah, right, that's,
But I mean, when you think about the history of that road, everything from the old police department being built and then later demolished, and then the hotel being built, all the school board projects, all the buses, the elementary schools, that road has taken a beating over the years, no question.
sure.
Yeah, and we've had discussions at the staff level. A developer purchased, I think it's the 300 block there, which is the old hospice building, and they have plans to eventually, I'm not sure where that is right now, but eventually develop a mixed-use project on that site. So we have discussed at the staff level the need to definitely do something with that road back there in conjunction with that redevelopment, because they probably would take access off that road in the back.
I suspect that they'd want it to be a walkable road where
Yes.
type of improvements that we're looking to put in those type of corridors.
But I think our discussion, though, when originally, when they first redid Largo High School and took away the schools, the price had, doubled, correct, from the initial? But because it was like 2 years between the time that the estimate was done and then we were going to actually get it done. So it was hard, I think the commission voted against it
Well, I think
because,
the biggest cost in this, if I remember correctly, was the size of the pipe that they wanted to put in. All the engineers are in the room, so you guys can answer it better than me, but I believe that was the main, there was some significant increase and related to the time from the original bid to whatever, when we were ready to do it, but I think during that time, and Jerry, let me know if I'm wrong, but there was a significant increase in the size of some of the infrastructure that was having to go in, and that skyrocketed the price.
And that also would be impacted by redevelopment. If there has to be stormwater or sewer improvements in that area, water lines, whatever, that would certainly be the time to do the road right now.
We're spending a lot of time on this road, but this, some of that infrastructure was taken care of by the redevelopment of the high school. Am I correct?
And that's where with using their consultant to update that design for the street and pulling out what they did no longer put in our corridor there. While, and I know we looked at that scenario of what those prices would be, it's still a very expensive project, but that's the nature of obviously maintaining and rehabilitating brick streets. And to your point, Commissioner, the street is new for the maintenance, and Barry's micro business is certainly going to try to make sure that it's either done in a segmented, phased way or whatever, just to make sure, because it's not going to heal itself. We know that. And we want to make sure
I didn't mean to, Mayor, didn't mean to
No, no.
sidetrack us on a 30-minute sub-quest for
Fixed other
the,
than just pouring asphalt in the hole.
I'm sorry?
I said it needs to be fixed other than just pouring asphalt.
No, absolutely. I completely believe we need to restore it back to its original glory, which might have, that was probably before Henry was here as well.
Might need to paint a line on it to keep Commissioner Hulk on one side.
I can't, there's too many high spots. It hits underneath the bottom of my car. You have to drive down the middle. I don't have that big truck you have.
Teeth rattle.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? I certainly have no issue with these exceptions for stormwater drains and ADA stuff. There's times that what they built in the 1920s isn't necessarily compliant with today's world, but where we can preserve it, I'd like to.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, looking forward to it.
We will bring you an ordinance sometime later this summer then.
I do have one question just out of, I know we're not talking about cost now, but when we do start looking at the cost of when we do these brick roads, I'm not saying we shouldn't do the brick, but I don't want to eliminate the knowledge of what it costs, the difference.
Certainly. We will always bring the commission the alternative to for the two roads that do have asphalt on it, we'll always bring the alternative just to do the mill and overlay to restore the asphalt, or that full price to remove the asphalt and restore the brick. So you as a commission can have that discussion on those alternatives.
And I suspect that didn't happen when they asphalted First Avenue Northwest. I suspect that they asphalted it. They didn't have public input. They didn't look at the cost of removing asphalt. And I assume, I could be wrong, but if they asphalted it, the base was okay, because they probably wouldn't have spent the money to put a couple centimeters of asphalt over a brick road if the brick road was failing. So I don't know. There could be a ton of patch. You never know what's underneath there.
There's.
But I think it's. I hate to use the word criminal. It's pretty bad to asphalt over a brick road. It's not a good decision. So. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know we haven't done that in a long time. I don't even think Henry was here then. So. Certainly wasn't driving the asphalt truck.
It was a really long,
It was a while ago.
really
Sure.
long time
Before there
ago.
was asphalt.
Was John here then?
Probably, yeah.
Just playing on First Avenue. All right, thank you very much. Next, does anybody have a committee report from any of the listed committees?
The only thing I would say, and we were talking about it earlier, was the League of Cities. We had a board of directors meeting last week. We discussed at length the likelihood of having a conference in August in South Florida. I wouldn't put a lot of money on that. One of the alternatives suggested was that they have like a one-day conference, because the Florida League's bylaws say that they have to have an annual meeting, a business meeting. So one of the alternatives was suggested was a one-day meeting in Orlando that you could attend online if you wanted to, but they have to have a meeting.
I got an email just before we came here from Florida League of Cities for the Diplomat in August.
That was a calendar thing from Gloria?
Yeah, from Gloria.
Oh,
She might have been doing a save the date. So stay tuned, it could happen, but it doesn't look like it probably will.
Can I add to that, John?
Yes.
Mayor, may I? The Sun Coast League of Cities will also be holding their annual planning retreat coming up in July on the 11th. It will be in Oldsmar. Obviously, we'll be getting an email and some calendar invites for that, but just so you guys can put a note on your calendar. So July 11th, 8:30 to 12 in Oldsmar at their public library. All are welcome.
What day of the week is that?
That's a Saturday.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
Any other reports? All good?
I have more, I was looking for some information to bring today for the continuum of care, but they didn't get it to me in time, but I just wanted to bring some information to you guys about what they are doing as far as the upcoming, because they are really planning on a possibility of a lot of evictions at the end of July or June, or whatever they moved the date up to. So there's been a lot of discussion about that. So I'll bring you guys some more information maybe next week's meeting.
The only other thing that I had was, I received I think we all received and this could wait for my item if we want. Let me see where we are. Well, we received a letter from the county commission Thursday last week. It was about the current situation with racial unrest throughout the country and how different police departments are dealing with it. And it said in the letter that the county was working with the sheriff's department, the Mayor Kreisman, and the St. Petersburg Police Department, Mayor Hibbert, and the Clearwater Police Department, and that was it. And those are the 3 departments in Pinellas County that were doing stuff around this and considering different our policies and if we need to make any changes. And I took a little bit of offense to that. I reached out to the chairman of the county commission and let her know that I was a little bit offended that, you either need to list all the agencies that are doing something or list none. Because it really gave the impression that we were not, and I think that our agency is leaps and bounds in front of many. So she understood my position and suggested that I might reach out to the media. So I asked Gloria today if she could put together a letter with communications and marketing, kind of addressing that a little bit. Last night on the local news, the local news headline said there's three agencies in Pinellas County that are doing some work on this. Again, implying as if the other agencies aren't. So I think it's important to note to the media and back to the county commission that, hey, listen, either list nobody or list everybody that is.
So along those lines, then what is, because from the article I read in the paper yesterday, the St. and again, I don't know this, so I'm just truly a question for me. St. Pete, Pinellas County, as well as Clearwater Police Departments and the sheriff, obviously, are adding adding to their policies that were already in place, that we might have already had in place as well. So my question then is, that was what the article was about, it's about the intent, or the officers are now going to be held to a standard of, if they see something that's going on. In the past, they were supposed to report that to a supervisor. Now it's going to state that they have to do something about it in the moment.
And I think, I could be wrong, but I think that's already our policy.
And that's just a question for me. That's a completely honest question as to what.
When the manager's finished, I was going to piggyback on some of what you said.
Commissioner Carroll probably knows more about this than I do, but yeah, I'm not sure about that specific one, how far ours goes, but I know that we have had some communication from folks. I think there's 8 policies that people feel that all police agencies should comply with. We have provided some information to the people that requested that. I believe it's going to be in our weekly report on Friday, and it is on the website. But we, I believe, substantially comply with all of those right now. So we are actually ahead of the curve as compared to a lot of police departments. We are a nationally and state accredited department. And I think that one on the specific one on intervening is compared to just reporting. I don't remember the specifics on that one, but I believe all the others were pretty much in compliance with.
I think there was one, maybe 2, that we didn't 100% comply,
Yeah.
and we're considering, the police department is considering how we can get there. And so.
And that's fantastic. And I'm really excited that we were there, and kudos to you, Mayor, for calling that out. I mean, I think that I would completely agree with you. If we're already there and they're just now catching up to us, then that should be noted well before anybody else saying, hey, now we're playing catch up behind the ball.
Right, and that's, you guys know that the county commissioner is a former mayor here. Mm-hmm. So she was very clear that, or very understanding that, listen, we get left out on a lot of stuff because we're the 3rd largest city in the Tampa Bay region, or 4th largest city in the Tampa Bay region, as opposed to one of the top 3, I guess. So, we deal with this a lot. And also the jail happens to be in close to Largo, so every crime story coming out of Pinellas County has a Largo dateline. It's another story, that's not the county commission's fault. But she understood where I was coming from, and it wasn't, she said that particular line item came from a commissioner, a different commissioner, who had spoken with those two mayors or the police chiefs from those two cities. And so it was kind of a late ad after she had already authorized the letter. But I think it's important to make note of it, so I did.
I completely agree with you.
But what I would add to that, and my thoughts on this, sometimes it's, as you all know, it's difficult for me to be quiet on some of these issues, but given my background, I would just remind you that in these troubled times, it's good to take a look at our own organization here and note the fact that the Largo Police Department's been an accredited agency since the 1980s. And they, not only are they accredited by the national, the CALIA, but also by the Florida Accreditation Commission. We've been used as a flagship agency, which means that our policies are either model policies or we are an agency that is marketed to other agencies as a way to do business. We do things like we send our officers to critical intervention training to de-escalate situations. We have senior service officers. We provide SROs in the schools. We have homeless outreach. We have victim advocates. We have mental health services. And I would say it's a good reminder and it's sort of a blessing that we have a local agency, because we can be more nimble with 150 officers than the city of New York City can be with 35,000. So if we have a policy issue that we think needs to be addressed or corrected, it's a much simpler process to do that. These are troubled times, no doubt about it. But I came here intending to say some of the things that you've already said. But during Arrow's presentation, it struck me that many of the success stories that Arrow was able to share in her presentation were directly connected to the police department. And that is a good indication that under this administration, we've gotten away from some siloed thinking and these departments are working together. So, I mean, there's a million reasons to be proud of the Largo Police Department. And the others that were mentioned, Chief Holloway down in St. Pete, Chief Slaughter up in Clearwater, the sheriff, they're all friends of mine. And they all attend the same meetings. Chief Understead is on the Pinellas Police Standards Council, where these policies will be discussed with the state attorney and the public defender, usually a chief administrative judge. So, I mean, we're in a good place. And I'm proud of the efforts of our department, and I'm proud of the efforts of the city to support our department. So thank you.
And I think importantly, we're not too proud to take a good, solid look at our policies all the time and understand that as good as we are doing, there's always room for improvement and always avenues to get better. So that's all on that, I think. Unless somebody else.
On top of that, Henry, could we update, I've had citizens ask that question. They don't know our policies. We don't have anything on Facebook or anything out there on our police department page about anything recently. If we could get that out there for them, I think that would be getting the information that they are looking for.
Yes, we will be putting that out. One of the things I like to say about our policies, Mayor Brown heard this today when we were talking about our emergency planning group, when someone says, well, we have a policy that says X. I say, well, the good thing is we wrote the policy so we can change the policy. But yeah, just adding on just real quick, a couple things I think we're a little bit ahead of the curve on is we recognize that policing is more than just about sometimes sending somebody out with a uniform and a gun, so that some other issues in the community need to be handled in cooperation with the police department and the fire department. But on issues like mental health outreach, where we created that contractual position in partnership with Directions for Living this past year, and we've seen some real success stories on that, and there's going to be a report to the City Commission at a future work session. We also were just in the beginnings of our homeless outreach efforts, again, through a contractual relationship. I had a a discussion today with the fire lieutenant, who's actually heading up that committee, which is an interdepartmental committee to address homelessness in the community, with police as a big part of that. And it was so refreshing to hear what that committee is doing, and they're taking a real data-based approach to first identifying the problems and then developing ways of addressing the problems. So that's really good to see. So yes, we do need to get that information out more.
Right. And if I may, I think to just kind of add on to Commissioner Smith's comment, I think especially if we are ahead of the curve and we're doing some of those things, and you know, sometimes it's good for Largo to fly under the radar. I say it often that, you know, St. Petersburg and Clearwater are often written about in the newspaper for some of the bad things that we're doing or they are doing, and you know, maybe we're not getting noticed as much for some of the good things we're doing at the same time. I'm okay with that sometimes, but I think on some of these things, especially now, and I mean, we talk about it often, but you know, in during these times, you know, especially again right now that you know, all these things are happening, I think it's a great opportunity for us to promote some of the fantastic things we're doing in Largo. And if it's some of the fantastic things that the Largo Police Department is doing, and the fact that we're already ahead of the game in that with some of these policies that a lot of these organizations are wanting other police departments around the country to enact, then good for us. Let's promote that. Let's talk about that. And you know, I think along with that opens those conversations up that a lot of people are wanting to have right now. So let's do that. I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to do that and promote some of the great things that we continually are doing in Largo. So
The only thing I would add would be specifically on the issue of use of force. The policies are still in place, and I'm sure they've been enhanced since I was there. But any use of force beyond normal handcuffing, which is basically you put your hands behind your back and you're getting handcuffed, any use of force beyond that requires that the officer complete a use of force report, which gets reviewed by supervision and ultimately goes to professional standards for review. And there is a system in place, and I think it was called the early warning system, basically, but it triggers intervention if an officer has a certain number of complaints or a certain number of use of force issues. I mean, they go and talk to the officer about, you know, why is this happening? You know, you haven't had this kind of use of force before.
Henry, when are we going to have real meetings again?
what is this?
This isn't a real, this is a fake one.
This is a
I'm
real
not getting
meeting.
paid for it then?
No, you're not. This is free. This is a donation.
We you know, unless otherwise directed by the city commission, we're practicing CDC guidelines regarding social distancing. So that's why, at this point, we're still all spread out.
Yeah, but if we were out protesting, we could be arm in arm. Anyway, moving along. Speaking of police departments and cops, why these? Number one, the city of Largo is not going to close up our police department, and we're not going to defund it. Matter of fact, I think it may be in order just to kind of kick it up a notch. But if you see a police officer out there, buy him a cup of coffee if you can. You know, when you see one, don't flip them off. These are the people that you're going to call when you got the bad guy knocking on your door. You know, when you dial 911, you're not going to get a social worker. You know, you don't want them coming to your house. You want a police officer coming to your house, and you want a police officer who's got a gun on him because he's there to protect you. And some of the stuff I've heard lately, I talked to the chief the other day, and he was over at Publix in downtown Largo, where people ordinarily would come up to him when he's in uniform and want to talk to him, and he's all of a sudden, he says, it's almost like you're forbidden fruit. People avoid you. And I talked to a couple of them today that they go down the road and these people are flipping them off. Well, I mean, there's no reason for it. You know, these guys are your friends. This is your first line when you dial 911 and you've got some miscreant trying to do harm to you. That's who's going to come to your aid. So all I can say is you see a cop, thank him, be nice to him, save your expletives for somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hulk.
I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Finger.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just going to say be nice to everybody, not just police officers. Mr. Schubert?
Yeah, particularly be nice to city managers,
Right, including but not limited to.
Proclamation?
regardless of how old they are. I want to go on record to say Commissioner Carroll started with the city just a couple weeks after I did. Well, I just want to end on a high note. We got, obviously, a lot of rain on Saturday. Our treatment plant is rated at 18 million gallons a day, but only 2/3 of it is operational because of the construction going on. 22 million gallons went through that plant on Saturday. We had no problems at the plant, and we had no overflows in our collection system.
That's great. Great.
That's all I have.
Henry, how can that be? It's only built for 18 and you had 22 and part of it wasn't even functioning? Did Jerry make a mistake on his engineering?
Well, there's the license capacity and then the actual capacity that you can push through it when you need to.
Ah, makes sense.
Are there any action items?
She's coming around.
I know. I didn't,
We forgot to get her a microphone.
well, the staff table had the microphone.
Hi, Diane.
Get your steps in.
The only one I had was Commissioner Smith's request that police department policies get posted on the city's social media sites.
It doesn't even, yeah,
Or the website.
it's just something we're going to do.
What's, you said that it's going to be out on the Friday, what's the thing on Friday?
City manager report.
City manager report. I'm thinking,
Largo today.
I had Monday morning briefing in my head, and I know that's not Friday.
Yeah, it's going to be on Largo today. It's going to be in Largo today. It is, I believe, somewhere on our website, but it's not easily found, so it's going to be put in a more prominent place on the website.
Excellent, thank you. Meeting's adjourned.